Sit at my grave, Chapter 16. Arden peered around the corner, looking to the living room where a soft light was on. He saw Renly and Easton standing across from each other, while Charlotte was sitting on the couch behind Easton, trying to fix her hair and clothes. "Calm down, Renly," Easton spoke smoothly. "Calm down? Easton, why would you do this to me?" Renly questioned in a strain. "Renly," Easton tried again. He put his hand up as though he intended to approach her, but Renly backed away from him. "After what we've just gone through? Why do you keep hurting me? All I did was love you," she screamed. Arden swallowed stiffly as he hid away and watched, too frozen and shocked to go in or to leave. He heard the slight arguing back and forth between his parents recently, but never like this. "Loved me? Throwing that around loosely again, aren't you? If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied like you did." Easton yelled back. Renly felt her body heat up. She wanted to run away, but she couldn't. Not this time. "Having that thing behind my back, roping me in? Then you want to play victim? Give me a break," Easton continued darkly. "That thing? After all this time? Easton, he's our baby. How can you say that?" Renly snapped, her eyes burning with tears as she huffed. "You thought you could manipulate me. You tried to destroy my life, and you want to act surprised when I wasn't happy with it? Yes, that thing that ruined our relationship," Easton shouted. His booming voice in there made Renly shake. She tried to blink back the tears and find her courage. "We don't have to do this. Reed's out of the way. The other one graduated. It can be the two of us again. We can have fun." Easton calmed himself. Renly wiped away her tears. "I'm sorry I ever had a relationship with you. I know this can't be the first time you've cheated on me." Renly spoke with a broken shake to her voice. "But I never tried to manipulate you. I thought you loved me and the family we created together. If anything, I lied to myself," Renly rasped out. Easton approached her again, scoffing. "Stop being so dramatic," he said in a low tone. Those words cut through Arden. He'd always wanted to be just like his father, and tonight he realized he did sound just like him. "Go be with her. Go have your fun. Don't worry about sending money or anything to me ever again. I want nothing to do with you." "I want a divorce," Renly said, her voice soft but honest. Easton paused. He couldn't make out the words to say. Perhaps he took the wrong path, but deep in his heart he did feel like he loved Renly. "Let's go, Charlotte," Easton muttered. He adjusted his coat, looking at his wife one last time before walking out with Charlotte. Renly slumped into the couch, holding her face. Her world was crumbling. Usually after a fight like this, she'd at least have someone to come help her, but now she was alone. "Mom, I want to know what's happening," Arden spoke up, walking over. He sat right next to her. It was difficult to put himself there in the midst of all the dramatics, but he pushed himself through. "I'm tired of not knowing. Tell me everything," Arden spoke in a hushed but firm tone. Accepting that he didn't know all he thought he did was challenging. However, with everything that just happened, he was more willing to be quiet and open his mind. Renly refused to look at him, eyes casted down. "Mom, please," Arden pleaded quietly, putting a gentle hand over hers. Renly's tense body, after a moment, finally relaxed a little. "It got so bad. But it wasn't always like this," Renly whispered with a shaky tone. She looked up, finally meeting Arden's eyes. She never intended on speaking about this with him, but she needed to get that pressure off of her chest. She was certain Arden must have been confused and upset too. Besides, they were all each other had right then. A young Renly sits on the cold bathroom tile in the apartment she shared with her boyfriend. Renly's hands shake as she takes a deep breath and lets it out. She brings a pregnancy test up slowly. She opens her eyes looking at the thing. "Positive," she reads in a raspy voice. This was the second test she'd taken that week. She'd also got it confirmed going to a clinic alone. She knew she was pregnant, but with every test she hoped it would say something different. Renly pulled herself back to her feet. She yanked off a bit of toilet paper as she wrapped up the pregnancy test and stuffed it away in the trash. Another sigh ripped through her body as she leaned over to wash her hands. Renly looked at herself in the small, smudged mirror. Not too young by some standards to be having a baby, but the condition she was in, it was no place for a child. Truthfully, she didn't mind the idea of being a mother. Babies were adorable. And what's the backlash of having someone to love for your whole life? But was she qualified? No parent was perfect, she supposed. But was it fair to her child? She thought over her life choices that got her there and contemplated it. Rinley was currently 19 years old and already had moved out. She lived with her high school sweetheart, Easton. She dropped out at 17 thanks to being too wrapped up in the fun of going out with her friends in Easton. It resulted in her staying with her parents until she was 18 and then leaving with them. Rinley smiled thinking of her boyfriend. He was so fun. She loved being with him. Never tired of things to do together. They were always on the move, too. The apartment now was the most stable spot they had in a while. Usually they always hopped from hotels to sleeping in their car and changing part-time jobs. After a while, Riley finally ventured back into their living room, which doubled as a kitchen. Their apartment was small, one bathroom, one bedroom, and the room she was in. With all their history together, Riley knew Easton wouldn't like her bringing a baby into the equation. He liked living fast and free. They both did. Wouldn't it be nice to have a family, though? A warm home, being surrounded by people who love you. Parties are fun, but Riley thought over what she would say to Easton. She'd already hinted at marriage more than once to him in their relationship, but he'd always waved it off. Really loved him, but sometimes she feared they were drifting in terms of what they wanted from life. "Hey babe, are you ready to head out?" Easton said as he came to the front door. "I rode by the club on my way. It's already getting crazy. We gotta hurry," he said, grinning. He came by kissing Riley before sliding over to the fridge, grabbing a drink. "Oh, what if we just stayed in tonight?" Riley mentioned meekly. "Stay in? Why would we want to do that?" Easton asked, laughing. He came and sat next to her, handing her a beer. "We could watch a movie, maybe talk about other things," Riley questioned, laying on him now. "Those other things wouldn't be what I think they are, would they?" Easton asked, raising his brows, though his tone sounded amused. Riley felt frustrated. It was like he didn't take her seriously. "Easton, you know I love you, baby. I want you happy, but these things are important to me. You can at least listen to it," Riley pouted. "Look, I've heard it all before. Marriage, careers, and whatever. We're happy, though. We can do whatever we want. If we never put ourselves in those strict positions, we'll never have to feel the pressure of it," Easton tried to convince her. "But Easton, guidelines can be good. It'll help us in the long run," Riley replied. Easton rolled his eyes, standing up. "We can talk later. Come on, we can't miss this party." Easton moved on. Riley sighed. "Okay, but you better not be lying," Riley said, pointing a finger at him. Easton laughed and Riley joined in. He held her hand, helping her off the couch as they both shared a kiss. As the pregnancy went further along, Riley continued hiding it. She couldn't keep waiting, though. Going to parties and being expected to partake in everything she used to, it was difficult trying to say no. Riley continued urging the aspects of marriage. She dolled up the idea as much as she could, saying how everything would remain the same, and that they'd just have more stability in a bigger house. And the wedding party could be fun. It took a lot of convincing, and Riley's parents willing to pay for the wedding, but Easton finally agreed. The proposal was expected by that point, but Easton still made it special for Riley, going to their favorite restaurant to propose to her. The wedding was pretty. Nice flowers, a gorgeous dress and suits. It wasn't huge, but they had family show up, and even a few friends. Riley tried enjoying her wedding. Sure, she was marrying the man she loved, surrounded by people she cared about. However, knowing she was pregnant and trying to hide it scared her. Riley was truthfully afraid of the commitment of motherhood and being a wife. She was still young, but the thought of trying to raise a child alone terrified her even more. She didn't want to be by herself, and after causing such a fuss by leaving home and dropping out of school, she would be afraid to tell her parents they were right about Easton, and that she wasted her time not getting her education just to crawl back home pregnant and alone. "I do," Easton said. They looked into each other's eyes. It was a beautiful moment. They were holding hands and really bit her lip, smiling at her new husband. "We'll be okay. I love him, he loves me, and when he knows about our baby, he'll be glad we have a family too," Riley convinced herself. They leaned in, kissing each other. This is the start of our new lives, she believed. As time went on, Riley continued trying to convince Easton about getting a house and getting full-time jobs. Of course, Easton was opposed to the idea, as he felt his freedoms were slowly being taken away, but really did her best to keep him happy. Eventually, there was no hiding it. Her belly was becoming more noticeable, and hiding how sick she was starting to get was becoming too difficult. "You're pregnant?" Easton questioned. The two had just gotten done looking at houses again, but were going back inside their apartment when Riley broke the news. She squinted her eyes as she was being yelled at. "When did you know?" Easton asked, slamming the door behind them. Riley sat on the small couch. She knew he wouldn't be happy at first, but she didn't expect these explosive reactions. "I knew for a while, but it'll be alright. The baby won't change things," Riley desperately tried to convince him. "Won't change things? It's already changing things. We're married," Easton yelled. Riley bit her trembling lip. She felt her eyes burn with tears. "Easton, can we just talk about this later?" she asked meekly, trying not to cry. "Talk about it later? You hid a whole baby from me, you liar!" Easton shouted. Tears started rolling down Riley's cheeks. She got up and hugged Easton. "Don't be mad, we'll navigate, just like we always have with everything else. I know it," Riley told him. Easton took a while before hugging her back. He kissed the top of her head, trying to calm down. Things quickly began changing since that day. Riley and Easton now had responsibility, and their money began going to that. Getting a house, paying for hospital visits, baby essentials, it all started to become a lot. Riley began staying at home more once she was unable to work due to the later parts of her pregnancy. Easton continued trying to keep their partying lifestyles alive, but was always getting saddened calls from Riley when he would stay away for too long, begging him to come back home. That's where the resentment began growing. "He's gorgeous. Look at his little nose. He's so perfect," Riley spoke lovingly. She was in a hospital bed, hugging her baby all bundled up in a blanket. "Isn't he beautiful, Easton?" Riley exclaimed warmly. Easton stood beside her, his hands shoved in his pocket, staring down at the tiny baby. A grimace spread across his face. "Easton?" Riley questioned, looking up. "I can't believe this," Easton muttered. "I know. I can't believe he's ours," Riley sighed. She hugged him as close as she could, eyes welling with tears. She hadn't planned on being a mother, but seeing her baby, she fell in love. "What shall we put on his birth certificate?" a nurse asked, walking in with it. "Do you have any input, Easton?" Riley questioned, having been trying to get him more involved for a while. Easton just turned his head and rolled his eyes. The nurse frowned in confusion, but Riley quickly spoke up before she could question it. "Reed Cassius Adler," Riley said. The nurse nodded, writing it down. Riley looked back down at her baby. "Welcome to the family, Reed. I love you," she whispered. Arden sat there soaking in every word. Hearing his family's past was jarring. For all he knew, everything looked so intentional and polished. Things went downhill. I was so mixed up in it. I guess I never took a step back to think how awful it became, Riley explained. "Things were rough before you were born. Everything was so up and down. Some days me and your father were happy, and it brought me back to our past of us dating. And other days, I just felt like nothing I did was right. And he would always hate me for settling down for your brother," Riley explained. It wasn't easy to talk about, but sifting through that pain felt more secure with someone beside her. Riley made a sour face. She turned away feeling a trickle of guilt, letting out a nervous breath as she continued to tell of their past. It had been years, but the Adler family finally moved into a proper house. Easton and Riley were both working and managing keeping a home for their two young boys. On the surface, it looked like a perfectly fine, functioning family, but behind closed doors, there was a whirlwind of turmoil, guilt, and pain. "You wanted a family. This is what families do. I've been out working, and you can't get a simple dinner ready without burning it," Easton shouted. He and Riley stood in the kitchen, smoke from an overdone pan of chicken wafting through the air. "It wasn't on purpose. I wish you wouldn't yell at me like that," Riley spoke back. She poked around the pan, trying to see if she could salvage the meal. "I wish I didn't have an incompetent wife," Easton responded. "It's not that bad. Look, I can scrape off the burnt parts," Riley tried to suggest, but Easton cut her off. "There's no fixing that mess. You screwed up again, and now I have to spend more of my money for decent food," Easton spat, glaring at Riley. Riley wiped her face, trying to look away from him. "There you go crying again. All you do is cry and whine, and for what? You got exactly what you wanted. Easton said harshly, his booming voice startling Renly again. I'm tired of the drama, Renly. I've done nothing, and you stand there crying like a baby. Is it too much to ask for decent food? Is that so hard for you? Easton said in a disgusted tone. I'm sorry, Renly whispered, her voice caught in her throat. You should be, Easton suddenly shouted again. He threw the pan of chicken to the ground, causing a loud clang, having the food spill across the floor. Renly jumped again, bumping into the counter as she backed away from him. Easton rolled his eyes at her. I'll be back. I'm going out for dinner, Easton said lowly as he walked away. Renly got down, picking up the food, trying to clean the floor. Her eyes were blurred with tears, and she was sinking to her own sadness. How did it get so bad? What did she do to make him hate her so much? Why was she so weak? Renly didn't even notice when she stopped cleaning, just to sit there and cry. She heard movement around her and quickly looked up, fearing her husband came back to see her like that. Baby, you don't have to do that, Renly spoke softly through her tears. I don't mind, Reed responded, getting everything cleaned up for her. Renly wanted to get up and do it, clean her face and make dinner for her children, but she felt so exhausted with trying to repair things with her husband. She wasn't sure exactly when it happened, but somewhere between Wesley raising Reed, he turned around and became her confidant, and it became easier to just let him fix things. Was that dinner? Reed asked, coming over to sit on the floor with her. Renly just nodded, wiping her eyes. Do you want me to make something else? He asked her, tilting his head. Renly felt her lip tremble, hot tears coming down again. I'll do it. Please don't cry, Mom, Reed said gently, hugging her as tight as he could. Reed hated seeing his mom cry. He did everything he could to pick up the pieces when her and Easton would fight. When she would have a bad day at work, or if she just needed a break, she would spend hours spilling her heart out to him. She liked the comfort. Her son loved her. He did everything to make her tears stop, and she depended on it. She depended on him. Things were different for Arden growing up. He was the baby of the family, and they tried hard to keep him from it. Easton didn't blame Arden for the rotting of his relationship like he did with Reed. His nonchalantness towards him, however, Arden would think of as still having a bond. Reed, on the other hand, was just as wrapped up in Renly and Easton's relationship as they were. Arden was either too young to remember a lot, out playing with Galen, or Reed was the one taking him out when he sensed a bad fight about to happen. It went on for years. That's why I felt the need to apologize to your brother. Those were my problems, but I shared them with my son, and had him give me comfort and solutions. He even stamped to your father for me, Renly said, a sad smile on her face. I was convinced things would turn out okay eventually, so I never thought to leave. And when your father started going on those business trips, I felt like they did. We talked on the phone, and he came by when he could. I thought he still loved the family, and our rough patch was finally over. Renly continued on, laying back on the couch beside Arden. Gears turned in his brain. The days Renly brought up clicked with him now that he knew her side and what was really going on at home. But he never changed. Even after we lose our son, I caught him on the couch with that assistant of his. If he cheats on me right here in our old home, who knows what else I don't know about, Renly said thoughtfully. She glanced over at Arden, seeing the shock coming through the poker face he was trying to keep. Here I go again. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm going to see Grandma Verna, Renly said, sitting up. Though she didn't feel at peace enough to sleep, her mind and body was exhausted by now. Arden stood up with her. He surprised her by giving her a hug. He stepped back after, unsure what else to do. Can I go to Galen's? He asked. Arden was experiencing the foreign feelings of guilt and remorse among other emotions, and he actually wanted to stay and help his mom now. He wasn't sure how he could. How would he ever manage to do what his brother did? That's fine, dear. We'll talk in the morning, she told him with a tired voice. She kissed him on the forehead before going off to call her mom. Even with some questions answered, Arden couldn't help but feel like some pieces were missing. What could have been Reed's side to everything? How was his and Easton's relationship like from his perspective? Arden wanted more answers as to why their dad had seemed so much nicer to him, yet so cruel to his wife and Reed. Arden figured he'd get more answers from Amory. Surely she knew more. She certainly acted like she did. And after all, she was Reed's girlfriend. He must have opened up to her if no one else. But he couldn't do that now. With everything he learned, his emotions were running wildly. Arden never felt like he could be wrong about so much. But now he felt like that same dumb kid again, walked off from the reality of what was really going on around him. Even with all the confusion and guilt in his brain, there was one thing clearly in his mind. He wanted his brother back. Arden stayed home instead of going to Gallon's. He didn't truly want to be there with him right then. He appreciated Gallon's kind words, but he didn't think he could stomach hearing them. He would tell him it was okay, that he would, with time, heal and cope. It was all nonsense to Arden right now. He didn't want positive answers and comfort. Maybe he wasn't clear on everything before, but he didn't want someone there making excuses for him now. It would only make him feel the weight of his guilt even heavier. Arden lay back on Reed's bed again. His mind couldn't rest. This surely couldn't be the end. The thought of throwing his brother away, leaving him to rot in the dirt after all he'd done to try to help him, it ate him up inside. The old memories he called useless were now all he thought about. There had to be something he could do. He wasn't that weak that he would just lay there and wallow in his regrets. He had to take action. Arden's vision suddenly landed on his book. His tired, sleepy gaze got a look of inspiration. Maybe there was something he could do. Arden stood outside on his porch in the dark. Only the light sounds of crickets around and the occasional cars rolling by in the background. The emotion coursing through him in that moment was surreal. A swing between feeling like everything he knew was crumbling around him and still feeling like he could somehow pull everything together and fix it. Maybe he didn't know much about his family's past or Reed's true intentions, but he'd never been good with that emotional stuff anyways. It's time to go back to what I know, Arden thought, clutching his book. Arden, I know you're upset, but this isn't the way to deal with it. I have to try. Come on, come with me. You know I'd normally come support you, but this isn't healthy. Take some time, it'll get better. I'm here. The rest of your family is too. I don't want to hear that. I know how to make it better, but you aren't listening to me. I am, it's just... This is going to do more harm than good, Arden. You're just panicking right now. Please, take a deep breath. How could it do harm? This is going to fix everything. Arden, this hurts me too. But it isn't going to work. This isn't the way. Not going to work. What, do you think I'm crazy? Gallon, talk to me. You think I'm crazy, don't you? I know what I'm talking about. I've been studying this for years. Arden, your family just went through a tragedy. I understand it's hard to process. You must not know what to think or how to feel, but you'll be okay. Okay? How am I expected to be okay without the person that's been with me through everything? Arden. Arden hung up on Gallon. So what if he didn't come with them? He could do it alone. It would be better that way. Arden had drug out his old bike and rode alone on the side of the road. The streetlight's the only thing protecting him from the harsh darkness all around. Being by himself, he couldn't stop the memories and regrets boiling over in his brain. But in that moment, he didn't care. He just used it as fuel. The sound of tire against pavement, his chain clanking, and his own labored breathing and heartbeat filled the air. Being out there, his thoughts were eating away at his mind. It's my fault, were the words he could make out the clearest. The feeling of being so wrong, it was a tough thing to swallow. Somehow Arden got comforted in the guilt with the thought that he could fix it. It took a while. Arden had to take several breaks. By the time he got there, his shirt was wet with sweat. Standing at the entrance, Arden swallowed stiffly. He looked up at the rustic archway above his head. The moon shined its light gently across the quiet area. It took courage, but he finally stepped forward and tossed his bike to the side. Every step Arden made, he seemed to be looking over his shoulder, the prickles of uncertainty crawling up his skin. He was still mildly fueled by the adrenaline and emotional state, but the reality of where he was alone was settling in. If you were wrong about so much before, what makes you think going here will fix things? What if you're wasting your time? What if you make things worse? These doubts ran through Arden's brain, but still, even with slow steps, he pushed forward. His chest heaved in and out, with shaky breaths as he passed by tombstones, using his phone light to guide his way. He had to try. This is what he knew the best, the only thing he had to cling to. He just had to be good at it. I don't have another option, the thought floated through his brain. Finally, he stopped in front of his destination. Arden had to force himself to look down and read the words. Here lies Reed Cassius Adler. Thanks for rocking our world. Arden bit his lip. He slowly lowered his body, staring at his brother's gravestone. Such simple words for someone who meant so much to others. He reached out with a shaky hand, touching it. He tried holding it tightly, but his hand just wouldn't grip. His body felt loose, his hands became clammy, and he felt his eyes getting hot and wet. Reed was his built-in best friend from birth, and regardless of their fighting, and as much as Arden denied it before, he loved Reed too. He liked him. He thought he was the coolest person ever. He looked up to him. Arden wiped his eyes roughly with his sleeves, feeling his body jolt a little as he strained himself to keep from crying. Arden grabbed his book out of his backpack. He began sloppily flipping through pages. There was a way to talk to ghosts. He had to try. Reed ripped that page out, Arden remembered. He wasn't that far in, but he was already feeling crushed. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do life without his big brother. And besides him, he couldn't help thinking, how could he measure up to what Reed did? He couldn't be a confidant for his mother. He couldn't lead a band. He couldn't do anything to help Amory. Was he even a good friend to Galen? What was he even going to do now that he finished high school? Arden dropped his book, holding his face, taking in some deep breaths. It should have been me. Everyone needs you. No one needs Arden, Arden whispered as the tears dripped through the cracks of his fingers. Please, please, give me my brother back, he whispered again, after trying to collect himself for a bit. He held his book, loosely repeating any words he saw that equated to anything he wanted. Page 13. Arden suddenly heard a thought in his head. Without questioning, he flipped to it, reading the first words. Resurrection. Any tiny thoughts telling him to be careful were shut down. Arden felt a sense of hope coursing through him, and without care, he began reciting it, one hand holding the tombstone, one holding the book. Hear me, spirits, heed my cry, allow my commands, hear my bidding, take up thy wish from flesh world. Allow me, my departed, rise up, touch into mine soul, fill mine desire, grant me my heart, rise thee up, read Cassius Adler. Arden spoke out, his voice rising up as he spoke the words. He looked down at the grave, breathing hard, noticing nothing moved, nothing changed. Arden cursed under his breath. He began reciting it again, still nothing. No, no, Arden thought. He tried again, shouting into the dark. Was he wrong about these things too? Arden gripped harder into the gravestone, eyes burning as tears fell. He didn't bother trying to wipe them now. Please! Arden shouted. He recited it again, clenching his teeth. I'll give anything! He shouted again. He breathed out heavily, looking around. Still nothing moved. And the fear of reality, of never seeing his brother again, settled in. Arden leaned forward, resting his forehead against the stone, letting the warm tears go down his cheeks. I just want my brother back. He spoke with a broken, hoarse voice. Well, well, well. Arden Adler. You just don't know what you want, do you? First you asked for your brother out of your life, and now you're here crying for him. Make up your mind. Arden's body stilled, a chill streaking up his spine as goosebumps formed. That voice. Arden's heart began pounding. Slowly raising his head up, gazing around himself, he wanted to ask who was there, but he couldn't find his voice. We've been together for all this time. Why so shy now? The voice asked. Arden clenched his teeth together. He steadied himself loosely on his jelly legs. This felt like the dream he had nights ago, but this time, the voice was so much clearer. It was like something was standing right behind him. Maybe this will make you talk. You say you want your brother back? I can do that for you. Arden gasped gently, finding his strength to turn around. A wave seemed to hit him. It was an unsettling presence. And much like his dream, it was taking his own will just to continue standing there and communicate with whatever spoke to him. Who are you? Arden questioned, keeping his voice still. In the back of his mind and natural instincts, he felt he had to keep some authority in his speech and movement, or else he would be overwhelmed. You may address me as Josiah Scold, but my name isn't all that important, is it? You have requested something major, and while I can get it for you, I must inform you that it isn't an easy task, and you will have to work for it. Arden swallowed stiffly, listening to the words. His mind wanted him to run, but firmly he stayed. There was no way he would pass up this opportunity. What do you need from me? Arden questioned, keeping himself steady. Low chuckling echoed around his ears, sending shivers through him, causing his body to tense. Granting you the death of your brother was no easy task. Josiah spoke. Arnon gasped, his jaw getting stiff. I never asked for it, Arnon began saying, but he was silenced. What a naive child you are. All those years of studying, and you don't realize you're the cause of his death? Josiah said in a humorous tone. Arnon had felt the guilt of not being there for Reed at the hospital and having a disgusting grudge against him, but to hear he was the direct cause. Arnon placed his hand over his chest, pupils dilating. How did I? Arnon began gasping out the question. Josiah was quick to interject. The Eidolon maledictio. It merges with the energy of its holder. It feeds off of negative emotions. And you've been harboring a lot of them. Josiah spoke with a breathy, satisfied sigh. So, I killed my... Arnon couldn't bring himself to say it. He cast his gaze down, feeling his heart pounding in his ears. It was all so insane. Every truth Arnon was figuring out weighed his heart down more. He wanted to scream, to be able to wake up and it was all over. But as he looked around that eerie graveyard, he realized he wouldn't be that lucky. At your request, I removed that blight off of your life. However, there is a way to reverse it, if that's what you want. Yes, Reed died, but not of what you humans call natural causes, Josiah explained. Arnon found his nerve again, his feet planted firmly to the ground as he balled his hand into a fist. Bring him back. If you granted me what I want him back, Arnon announced, but a low chuckle sent a quiver through his belly, rocking his courage. As I was saying, yes, it took you and the book to complete this request. However, it's taking years for me to muster up the strength to touch the mortal world this way again. And a request so major and life-altering as to bring someone back, that takes a lot more effort. If you want me to grant you your wish, it'll take a lot of work on your part. Do you understand? Josiah simplified again. Arnon swallowed roughly. What do you say? Do you truly want your brother back? Josiah questioned, causing a brief apparition of Reed's face right in front of Arnon. Reed! Arnon barely got the words out, reaching towards his brother's hand, but just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone again. What do I have to do? Arnon muttered roughly, casting his gaze down. His tense body shook gently. Interested, I will provide you with the knowledge, the tools you need. I just want to be sure we have a deal. Get me what I need, I get the strength to carry out your request. Care to shake on it? Josiah questioned. Arno's eyes widened as he watched the pale hand seem to rip through the darkness and outstretch towards him. Arno felt almost paralyzed. His head was aching and everything felt so hazy, and his heart was beating like he'd just finished a race. All his study, he never thought it would get him there. He had no true idea of what he was agreeing to, but would it be selfish of him to ask about it, knowing now that he wasn't that careful with Reed? He was the direct cause of his death, and here he was afraid for his own life. His stomach was on fire with fear and anxiety, while his body was numb in the cold. He wanted to run, but he couldn't. He had to face this. He had to right his wrong. Arno stuck out his unsure hand and shook the one presented in front of him. In that moment, Arno felt an intense wash of energy rush through his body, seemingly ripping through his flesh, rippling down into his bones, only to wash out the other side. His body was forced to tense as his eyes rolled back. He felt suspended on his feet, his body held there with a force other than his own, while he was stuck there gasping. As the feeling coursed through him, his body fully seemed to exhaust to the point where he could no longer hold himself up. He fell backwards, his chest heaving with harsh, desperate breaths. Finally, with rapid blinking, Arnon gained his sight again, his vision going from complete darkness to blindingly red, and now he looked up. Thankfully, he could see the night sky with all its stars once again. The murmuring in his ears ceased, and at last he was the only thought he could hear in his brain. Arnon carefully raised his hands to hold his face, still bewildered with what he had just been a part of. His entire being trembled while he tried to grasp what he'd just done. He allowed himself to relax even further, only to realize where he'd fallen. sitting right next to his brother's grave. Arden's eyes fixated on the tombstone. After a moment of collecting his thoughts, he clenched his jaw tightly, forcing his body to stop shivering. He collected his book and got himself back to his feet, a sense of determination imploring him to find his courage, despite the uneasiness, overall fear he had. Arden couldn't begin to guess what his new journey ahead would entail, but regardless, he made a promise. He would make an effort to right his wrongs and get his brother back, no matter what.